to a store, and it is possible that she went to a Bunnings, but they may not have been in the same day, same trip, and she may have just, in the alphabet soup of her memory on drugs, she may not, and I'm not saying illicit drugs, I'm saying prescribed drugs because of side effects. She might have thought that she was telling them the truth, and it's one of those things with memory. When you recall it and you say this is
you rewrite it.
You rewrite it and you seed it. Yeah. And so she may have inadvertently stuck to the wrong story.
Well, she might have. I mean, that's what a lot of people are saying. They're saying that she might have, it could just be misremembering some things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It seems like you might say to them, like, you know what, I know this sounds really suspicious. I'm on some drugs. I'm happy to, my doctor can talk to you about the side effects.
But she may not have realized that it was screwing with her memory, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's true. I don't know.
She may sure.
Anyway, sorry,
she didn't remember.
This is a good, good murder tip for all you potential murderers out there. Don't ever give the police too much. Just give them the bare minimum. They say, well, where were you yesterday? Well, I saw Bob, and then I went home. And then later on, they're saying, well, we can't account for you being home with you. I say, oh, well, I did stop at the store for a little while on the way home. And that's not suspicious. I mean, if I go, and so anyway, just a murder tip there.
Good job, Joe.
Yeah, I know. Oh, where were we? So she had talked to the police. This is, again, like a month and a half, I think, after the disappearance. Around this time, the police also talked to Sue's daughter. She had two daughters, as I said, and they showed her a picture of a car which looked just like Sue's car. And they said, well, this photograph was taken right down by the Royal Yacht Club on 12:15 a.m. the night of the murder. Is that the fucking your mother's car? And they said, well, I guess. And well, they must have talked to Sue about this because right after that, her story started to change. Yeah. A few days after that, she told, remember, Ann Sanchez, Bob's daughter, was on the phone with her, said she that night, the night of the disappearance, that she had been worried about Bob out there on the boat by himself, and so she got in the car and drove down to the water to look at the boat, and then she drove back home.
Just to gaze longingly into the distance
in the
at
dark.
the boat?
I don't know what she expected to see, because it was
drug smugglers.
Dark. Well, maybe she expected to see the boat in flames or something like that. I'm not sure, but...
Well, that bomb she planted.
Yeah, or that.
Somehow hadn't gone off yet.
Yeah, well, and then not long after, on March 13th, she was interviewed by Felicity Ogilvie, who was a reporter for ABC, which was, Australian Broadcasting Corporation, I think?
Sounds good.
Yeah, and she told her a similar story about about not staying home all night, getting in the car, driving down to check on Bob. Felicity passed this on to the police. This was the first time police had heard this. She had always told them that she was home all night. So obviously that got their interest. Then March 23rd, Sue had a phone conversation with Ann Sanchez again, and this time she said that she had driven down to Marieville Esplanade, again the street right outside the Royal Yacht Club, and left the car there, and that was late that night, left the car there and walked home for exercise.
Sure.
So changed the story again a little bit. And then May 5th, police interviewed her again, and she told them that she'd actually been mixed up about time. She was actually on the Four Winds later than she had thought with Bob. And then she said after that she went to shore, left her car parked on Marieville Esplanade or maybe Margaret Street, and walked home because she wanted the exercise. And then later that night, she said, she decided she should go get the car and bring it home. And so that was, again, I don't know how late.
At some point.
Yeah, at some point. So she walks down, again, a 2-mile walk from her house. She walks down to the waterfront. And when she got to the waterfront, she realized she brought the wrong keys. And so she didn't have the car keys. So she turned around and walked back home. And she got the correct car keys and walked back down to the waterfront.
She definitely hit her step goal for the day, didn't she?
For real.
Yeah, we're talking 6 miles there. And looking...
What's the original 2 miles she walked home without the car from? So that's a total of 8 miles of walking a day.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's a lot of walking.
Pretty good. She was 55. That's not bad at all.
Yeah, some people walk.
Oh, no, I mean, I'm not saying that I haven't walked 8 miles in a day. I'm just saying that's...
Usually when I go for my 6-mile hikes, I do it in the daylight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this would have been late at night, right?
Yeah, very late at night. Remember,
Right.
she was on the phone with Richard King till 10:35.
That's
so,
right.
yeah. So it would have been at least, after that. So she finally succeeds in coming down there with the right keys, and she got the car, Then she drove north, and you can see this on Google Earth if you look at it. She drove north. There's a jetty there just not far north of the yacht club, and there's some metal sheds out there where there's a rowing club, and drove out onto the jetty to the end and walked down to the end of the jetty to look across to the boat and see it, and just to check on Bob. And who knows, maybe she was like jealous. She thought Bob might be partying or something like that. She was looking for like bright lights and loud rock music or something like that. But she
a little shrimp on the Barbie.
Yeah.
And rock and roll tunes.
Yeah, so she looked out to see if what was going on with Bob. Couldn't see anything because it was pitch black.
Because it was night.
Yeah, it was night. And then she went home.
Surprise.
Yeah. And then in that same interview, the police asked her about the red jacket again. And they said, you know, I don't know if they actually pulled it out and showed it to her or just mentioned it to her. They said, well, you remember the red jacket that you said you'd never seen before? Well, we tested it for DNA. Your DNA is all over it.
It's your jacket, isn't it, Sue?
Yeah. And so she admitted it was her jacket. And then...
Well, okay, wait. What's so incriminating about the jacket other than they found it and she lied about it?
Yeah, nothing really. I don't,
Okay.
I mean, it's just strange that she lied about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just making sure I'm clarifying that there wasn't something on it that incriminated her.
I guess I should say the only other thing that was incriminating about it was that Sue had said she left in mid-afternoon. She left the yacht and went to Bunnings and then went home. And the person who lived in the home at 2 Margaret Street found it early in the morning. He said when he came home at night, and I'm not sure exactly what time that night, the jacket was not there. Mm-hmm. So sometime
in the night, its way.
The jacket winds up on this wall.
Okay.
And so, that's the significance of the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah. And also the denial, frankly, it never looks good to police.
So none of this is looking good for her when she goes to court.
No, it doesn't look that great. Yeah, and at trial, it did go to trial. Things didn't get better. And so remember what I just said after she got in the car, she'd driven to the end of the jetty to look at the Four Winds and check on Bob. Well, it turns out there was somebody else on that jetty that night. His name was John Hughes, and he testified that he didn't see anybody else out there. And since Sue said she'd driven out to the end of the pier or the jetty in her car,
it'd be pretty hard to miss.
That would be kind of hard to miss, yeah. And Hughes also testified that he did see a woman or somebody who looked like a woman in an inflatable dinghy with an outboard motor heading northeast from the Royal Yacht Club and in the general direction of the Four Winds. And that was about between 11:30 and maybe 12 that night.
Okay.
And so that's not so bueno. And then also the police, as I said, interviewed everybody that Sue knew, and Sue and Bob knew. And they happened to track down this guy, one of the sailors, Peter Stevenson, the guy.
One of the guys who helped bring the boat to where they were at, yeah.
Yeah, one of that guy. He testified that Sue, when they were on the trip, told him that her relationship with Bob had been strained and that it was basically over, and it had been over for some time. He also said that when they arrived in Hobart and Bob met them, apparently he approached Sue, maybe wanting to hug her or something like that, and she just basically kind of stood back from him and ignored him. Was not warm towards him at all. So again, that doesn't prove anything.
No, it just proves that they were fighting.
Yeah, I mean, but still,
which is a very normal thing for couples to do.
Well, it is, but they've been apart for quite a while. I don't know how long it takes to sail from Queensland down to Tasmania. I would think it would take a while. I mean, think like a week anyway.
Something like that. But listen, if something gets in somebody, they get a burr under their saddle and they are pissed at you about something.
Yeah.
And they've had a week to stew on it by themselves, and then you show up.
Yeah, maybe.
They're not going to welcome you with open arms. They're going to say, "Get the hell away from me."
Yeah, it could be. I mean, this is all not necessarily proof of anything like that. Just there was some tension between them.
Okay.
But I don't know what more testimony they had. He testified that he'd been with Bob and Sue in the Four Winds twice in the month before the murder. And he said the tension between them was so thick that you could cut it with a knife. He said it made him uncomfortable. And then he also said that Sue told him on January 27th, again, this is like right after Bob disappeared, Four Winds had been broken into twice in Hobart. And Tim said he was surprised because he hadn't heard anything about this before. And I got the impression that Tim actually had a fairly close relationship with his dad, and his dad probably would have mentioned something like that too, and that's why he felt surprised by it. And she actually, I mean, as far as all the break-ins, Sue had said that it had been broken into, the yacht had been broken into up in Queensland. Later on, she denied that she had ever said that. She said, and it's so, her statements on that, and that's why there's a lot of statements she made about this stuff. I'm not talking too much about that because she was all over the place on that.
Well, and this is, again, another one of those stories where there's so many conflicting accounts, especially when they come from that one person, that it's hard to cover them all because it becomes jibber jabber.
Yeah,
it's hard to follow because I did this, no, I did that, I did this, no, I did that, I did this,
the whole break-in thing, and there were a few other testimonies to the fact that she had said that the relationship was over. I'm not going to name names or going too deeply into that, except for one guy, a former friend, and I think by former friend, I don't think they had a falling out, but they just sort of like
stopped hanging out.
Just stopped hanging out, lost track of each other. But this guy's name was Philip Triffitt. Last name reminds me of Triffid. But he used to be buddies with them, and he testified that in the 1990s, I think this was like 96 or 97, he was on Sue's boat. This was the boat that she owned prior to the Four Winds. And they were out. She asked him to help her take her brother Patrick out to sea and drown him.
What?
Yeah, apparently there was some dispute between Sue and Patrick over her mother's property, and so Sue had this plan to weigh Patrick down with a toolbox and send him off to Davy Jones' locker. And then her idea was that Philip Triffitt would then take the boat closer to shore and sink it after she had gone ashore in the dinghy. And then he testified in court, she showed him how they could sink the boat by using the bilge pump. And that'd be another way too. I mean, besides just shutting it off, you could actually reverse it. You could reverse it.
So did he mention if she came up and explained this entire plan over a case of Foster's?
I'm assuming they were on a boat. I'm assuming there were a few beers involved.
Well, that's what it's like. You sit around and you can talk. I mean, if you got nothing to do but talk for days, you can come up with some wild stuff and keep going. Especially if you're boozing it up.
Oh, sure, for sure. I mean, if they put me on trial for murder, all the people that they could drag in to talk about. Oh, how many times did Joe talk about murder with you? Well, quite a few times.
See,
actually.
We've done 200 and
and so it wouldn't look good for me. That's why I got to stay out of that whole thing.
Yeah,
yeah, and I don't know why, but Philip Triffitt, I don't know why he didn't agree with this this plan, or maybe there was a part about him sinking the boat after she'd taken off with the lifeboat, because that was her plan. You sink the boat while I'm going to shore in the dinghy. So apparently
you hang out on the sinking boat.
Yeah, that never came to it. Maybe he was a good swimmer. I don't know. But he also testified that not too long after that, he and Sue had another conversation at her home, and Sue said that she wanted to do a similar thing as she talked about with her brother Patrick before, except she wanted to do it with Bob, and she wanted to wrap him in chicken wire instead of doing the whole. I don't know why chicken wire, but
maybe this is why Philip didn't want to be friends with her anymore.
Maybe.
Because she just kept being like, these are all the ways I'm going to murder the people around me. And he was like, maybe I shouldn't be. Maybe I don't need this.
Friend at work.
Yeah.
Well, so he's like thinking, well, when I'm not around, she talked about murdering me. Yeah. I wonder.
Maybe I don't need this kind of negativity in my life.
Do I want to be boating with this person?
No.
Out in the ocean? Well, maybe not. Don't turn your back on her anyway. Yeah. Well, anyway, so that didn't look so good. But of course, that's not dispositive. But in the when you look at all the other things that people are saying Sue said to them, well, it doesn't look so good.
And she could have just been a generally unpleasant person.
I don't know.
I mean, it's completely possible.
Yeah,
probable.
I don't know. But well, anyway, long story short, Sue was convicted and sent to the pokey for murder based on a very circumstantial case, and of course, her family and friends began a movement to exonerate her and get her sprung from prison. Again, as we already said, the case against her wasn't really airtight. There was no body, no murder weapon. There was that DNA evidence showing two other people had been on the boat. And they also stressed, as we've already talked about, that her changing stories might have been the result of a poor memory and stress and drug use. And then there were 3 witnesses who said they saw a gray dinghy alongside the Four Winds that day. Of course, and the Four Winds dinghy is white. So, and they said they saw a gray dinghy.
Yeah, that's varying grays of varying shades of white.
Well,
and distance.
That is the deal. Is that and certain, especially if it's in the shade and stuff like that on a sunny day.
I don't put a whole lot of stock in it. It was a gray versus white boat.
Yeah, I know. And so that's. But then, and I also mentioned that thing about the Victoria Police doing their review, and they're thinking that the deposit of Megan Voss's DNA was by direct contact and not transference. And they also said that they felt that it would have been, quote, mechanically impossible for the applicant to have winched the deceased in the manner described by police, unquote. So that was their considered opinion. They didn't think it was possible for her to get that body out of the cabin and into the dinghy, not pursue anyway.
Okay.
That's what they said. And then last of all, there was a local sailor whose name I can't remember now. I saw a picture of him.
Well, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Well, the picture of him was a somewhat older picture where he had long shoulder-length hair. And he came out after the trial and conviction and said, "Well, I was out in my dinghy that night, and my hair was down to my shoulders. Maybe he saw John Hughes on the jetty at the rowing shed, saw me and not Sue. I mean, it could have been he saw me."
And saying you're going in the general direction of a boat is a pretty wide swath of direction. So.
Yeah, it is. It is. So these are some of the various things that have made people think that, well, maybe Sue's case deserves another look. Mm-hmm. And it has had another look or two. Again, there's been appeals and more appeals. The most recent one, I think, was to the Australian Supreme Court. So this is what we call controversy. As I said, it's gotten huge coverage in Australia. And, of course, there's that $40,000 reward that I think I mentioned earlier.
Yep.
And
the billboard.
And the billboard. And in this latest appeal earlier in this year, Sue's defense lawyers promised there'd be some startling new fresh evidence. And it is, because Megan Voss, remember her, has returned.
Oh.
Yeah.
That girl.
Uh-huh. But before we talk about that, let's take a break.
You wake up one morning and realize you're 30, or 40, or 50. You feel bloated and chubby from overindulging like you're 21 again. You promise yourself that this year is the year you are going to do something about it. Why not make things easier on yourself with a customized protein drink that's jam-packed with all the essential nutrients you, yes you, need? It allows you to personalize your mix while delivering the highest quality of fruits, vegetables, and protein, plus 25 essential vitamins and minerals. And since iFit Nourish is passionate and picky about their ingredients, there's no artificial flavors, no added coloring, no preservatives, and no filters. Ever. And don't worry, all of their flavors have been approved by a panel of taste judges, aka us, and are completely delicious. Are you ready to simplify your life? Just go to ifitnourish.com/sideways for a free 14-serving bag of iFit Nourish mix and shaker bottle. It's hassle-free and 100% convenient. It's ifitnourish.com/sideways to create your own mix today, because motivation is hard enough.
And we're back. In April 2017, which is just mere months ago, Megan Voss finally fessed up. She signed a statement admitting that on the night of January 26, 2009, she was indeed on board the Four Winds with two unnamed men. And this obviously is a game changer. I mean, all the other previous appeals, they've never really brought any startling, fresh new evidence.
They're really just fighting what they considered circumstantial evidence.
Yeah, essentially, they keep going
poking holes in the case.
Yeah, trying to, just saying, hey, this guy had long hair that night, and he said he was out in his boat. Yeah,
Luminol activates on other things. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But this was really a game changer. But then in fall, this is just a couple of months ago, it was time for Megan. And obviously, by the way, if you're listening in the year 2057, well, it was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, for us, from this standpoint. But when it was time for Megan to take the stand, she recanted her story. She said she had been coerced into signing the statement about being on the Four Winds. And it turns out that her boyfriend was a biker named Sharky.
Great name.
Yeah,
I think I'm going to change mine to that.
He is a member of the Devil's Henchman Motorcycle Club. That's a fun name. Mm-hmm. Yeah, her this boyfriend Sharky had another girlfriend. Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, right.
Good relationship.
I know. These are wonderful people. This other girlfriend's name is Karen Keefe. Karen did some time in prison. Turns out she was in the same prison as Sue Neal Fraser.
Of course she was.
Yeah. And Karen seems to have hatched a scheme to collect that $40,000 reward, plus some other money. There was talk in the press about a total total amount of $93,000
Wow.
Australian.
What?
Yeah,
It's a lot.
yeah.
Where'd the other $50K come from?
Well, I'm not totally sure about
Okay.
that. I'm not saying that Sue promised it to her or anything like that. Maybe somebody else. I had no idea exactly
Okay.
who promised her this
Some kind of
money.
private source that we don't know about.
But yeah, exactly. And but anyway, we're talking about an overall amount of, a substantial amount of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least in Australia. But the scheme involved getting Megan to confess involvement in the crime, which would tend to make it possible to maybe get Sue out of prison. But it turns out when Megan recanted, she said she had been coerced. She said